It's now 7:46. I'm calling the meeting of the South Country Board of Education back into public session after the executive session meeting. There's no action to report from that. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask Mr. Flippett, please, to lead us.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let me say that we have the entire board present. Our board president, though, is attending virtually, and it was thought it would be easier if I conducted the meeting because it's a little cumbersome when you try to do it virtually. But I'm kind of rusty, so please bear with me while we do this. For emergency evacuation procedures, just take notice of the exits, and if in case there's emergency, please go through one of the exit doors and leave the building quickly as you can. Also, this is a smoke-free school district. No smoking is permitted anywhere on any grounds. It's also a bully-free and hate-free school district. We now have the board consent agenda, item C. And do you have your recommendation?
Thank you, Vice President Hayes. I do. The administration recommends the approval of board consent items reflected in Schedule C1 through C4.
Excuse me, Mr. Superintendent. Can we take them separately only because I wasn't present for the meetings where we're approving minutes?
Okay, well then, let's,
So we can do,
Let's
you can do
switch.
one, you can do 1 and 2 together, which I'll abstain from participating in, and then 3
Okay.
and 4 together, which I can join in the
all
vote.
right.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Is there a motion to approve items C1 and C2? Motion by Mr. Barry, second by Mr. Trent. All in favor? And
Her hand is raised.
six, all right, 6 in favor, and then 1 abstention. So that approval is granted. And now a motion to consent to items C3 and C4. Motion by Mr. Trent, second by Mr. Flippin. All in favor? And is it unanimous? Yes, thank you. Okay, so now we're on to the superintendent, items D.
Thank you. Switching the order a little bit. Thank you. All right, I want to welcome everyone to the penultimate day in February. This year is a leap year, and I want to share a quick funny story. My mom was 83, asked me what's happening in the world when they added a day to the calendar. So she forgot about the leap year, so we get to enjoy another day of February, not tomorrow, February 29th. But I'm happy to have special guests here from the South Country Education Foundation. Their generosity throughout the year has led to a lot of what I like to label, it's a very professional term, awesome learning experiences. What they've been able to do is fund different experiences for our students here in our districts, K-12, and in addition to the Boys and Girls Club, by providing funding by virtue of grants that our staff apply to for things like the Ron Clark Academy experience at Bellport Middle School. This will provide professional development for teachers in social emotional learning. An introduction to industrial design by the purchasing of 3D printers, as featured here in this photo. Write and wipe mobile standing desks at Belport Middle School. Exploring some oceanography at Cap Street. We'll be taking kids from Crits to experience the ocean in the Great South Bay. There's also a grant for the Osaka Red Trunk Project. What that is a company comes in, they have a trunk full of cultural items from Mexico that the kids get to explore. This is slated for Brookhaven Elementary School. Some more flexible seating for our students. You know, as we know, kids these days are somewhat different. They need to move around. Flexible seating is a huge hit in our classrooms, so we're looking forward to having some more of those installed. Also at Crits. Kindergartens from Crits are slated to go to the Suffolk County Farm and Education Center to learn about farming and some of the farm animals and local produce. We're also purchasing a portable choral recording studio for our middle school choir department. This will allow students to record individual vocals in a portable environment. We're looking to help fund our students in our culinary program. We'll be competing again at Epcot Center in a competition called Cook Around the World. It was a great experience last year, and we're happy to provide that experience for our high school students this year as well. We're also going to be purchasing sort of like a printer, a specialized color printer that helps it supplement math instruction. That's going to be dedicated to the middle school. And our elementary school students will be attending 3 performances at Theater 3 in Port Jefferson. These are just some of the grants that were granted by the South Country Education Foundation that amount to a little over $40,000 in funding. So for that, I'm super appreciative. And before I call the South Country Education Foundation up, we're also in discussions to bring swimming lessons to Frank P. Long, which with the support of the South Country Education Foundation, we're really excited to potentially implement that for this coming June. So the idea is to take our 5th graders for swimming instruction at the YMCA, and we know swim safety is important. So really excited by that. So I want to call you both up. If you want Ms. Hayes to please, Trustee Hayes, you want to join us, issue a certificate of appreciation for your continued generosity. So thank you so much. And if we could get a round of applause, that's
Oh, picture.
Yeah,
Thank
so I
you.
don't-
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, okay.
I wanted to say.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you both again.
Okay.
Thank you for the foundation.
No
Much
problem.
appreciated.
Yeah, enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You take this one first.
So, a little less exciting is again my reminders about inclement weather reports. I'd just like to remind the community that we will be communicating, hopefully very proactively, in the event of another snow event. Looking at the forecast, it's supposed to drop into the 20s tonight, but then be warm again on Friday, so the weather has been a little wacky. But again, there's multiple resources that we use to communicate potential closings. We always try to make the calls as early as possible. But please tune into your local radio stations, News 12. But the idea or our intention is to communicate to the community before it even hits the news if there's a potential delay or closing. February also marks Black History Month, and we've been observing a lot of different sort of events in our schools in commemoration of the month. This afternoon, in fact, I had the pleasure of attending an African Rhythms performance at Belport Middle School, along with Trustee Hayes. It really was a fantastic experience. It was hard not to smile and sort of get into the music. What I really liked about it is, even though it was sort of a performance on African music from Guinea in Western Africa, the performers represented all different backgrounds. We had one of the percussionists was from Wisconsin. We had a dancer from Austria. We had a young man from Brooklyn and one West African man in this group. And to me, again, I always emphasize that Black History Month is all our history. It's American history. It was just a great event. They called some students up to the stage who got to participate in the percussions and some of their dancing. So it was a great time. The picture's small, but I know Jackie O'Hagan, our Director of Humanities, was having a great time, and as you can tell by the smile in her picture. I also had the pleasure of attending the Black History Month Showcase at the Boys and Girls Club, which really was a hit. I want to give credit to Mr. Steven, who's been doing Black History all year long for some of the students who participate in the program there. Mr. Rika Adams for hosting, and there were amazing performances there, as well as food to be enjoyed by the community. And a special shout out to Ms. Williams, one of our teachers, who sang an amazing rendition of Stand Up. She's been photoed there, but I really was moved by her performance. It really was something remarkable. And along the same themes, our middle school students did a musical tribute for the Black History Month that was hosted in the middle school library. And moving on, this afternoon I really had a great pleasure of going to Bellport High School Living Library. This afternoon, or throughout the day at Bellport High School, we hosted different African American leaders who are all under 40, this is according to Mr. Budress, but basically who serve as contemporary role models for our students. These individuals included Ms. Sarah Kennard, she's a social worker over at Kramer, Ms. Renee Smith, she's our varsity girls basketball coach and a social worker by trade, Mr. Jerome Bedford, who's a medical student at Stony Brook, Ms. Nefa Abwamwa, which is a social studies teacher at the high school, Ms. Kendra Hughes, an E&L teacher, Mr. Rich Brown, who actually owns a Puerto Rican pro basketball team. He spoke about his experience in basketball, playing overseas. Ms. Kanasia Charles, who's a law student. Ms. Kai Hatcher, a librarian and graphic designer. Ms. Kim Blackett, which was an organizational psychologist, who had a great conversation with, offering some insights into organizational psychology, which was really interesting. And on the top right corner, we also featured one of our social studies teachers, Mr. Romello Green. And Mr. Romello Green is here tonight because he is the winner of the New York State Council for the Social Studies 2024 Susan Wasserman Young Professional Memorial Award for his outstanding work in his young teaching career and the impact he's already made on students. So I want to call up Mr. Green so we can formally acknowledge his accomplishment. Thank you for being welcome, for participating today. I don't know if you want to say anything, I'll put you on the spot.
I'm just very thankful to Superintendent Santana, to Vice President Hayes, just for this opportunity and for this award. I'm very humbled, honored, but grateful to be a recipient of the award. And I think this achievement comes just for the space that I've been allowed here at South Country to share my ideas, being brought to the table, to be innovative in the classroom, and just the hard work of my students, dedication of my colleagues. I'm very grateful for this experience, and South Country has truly become like a second home to me. So I often tell the students, although waking up early is difficult, I never mind waking up, and I enjoy coming to school each day because I love where I work and I just love South Country. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Green, and thank you for what you do. Thank you, Mr. Green. All right. So a lot more exciting stuff happening in our schools. The next one's a bit more fun, but I had the distinct pleasure of attending SpongeBob the Musical, which was fantastic. One of the things I found most remarkable about the show, not just that it was entertaining, the choreography and the music was fantastic, but really the message about, how this little sponge could make such a splash. The message really was a message of inclusivity, collaboration, and positivity that was only matched by the great performance. And it was hard to leave that performance not feeling happy and faithful in our world. So the cast was awesome. In fact, they were so awesome, they hosted a character brunch on Saturday, which I attended. I actually got my face painted by them. But they were awesome. There were little kids in attendance who really looked at our high school performers as celebrities. But great performance all around. So big credit to our performing arts department, Ms. Victoria Hartman, who directed the show, and everybody else who was involved in our show. Fantastic time. I'd also like to provide a little high school winter sports update. Of course, I have to begin with the amazing victory in the semi-final round for the Suffolk County Championship, our girls varsity basketball team, who defeated the #1 seeded Half Hollow Hills East. This weekend, they face West Hampton on Sunday for their championship game. So I encourage our community members to go support the girls. Really, it was a fantastic and emotional game. Trustee Barry, Trustee Hayes were there in attendance. And yeah, the excitement was incredible. I also be remiss, our student representative is not here, Brent Johnson, but I want to give her a special shout out because this year, she actually scored her 1,000th point. So during her high school career, Bryn Johnson scored 1,000 points, which is a remarkable achievement. And the only reason she's not here is because she's receiving a Suffolk Zone Award for physical education tonight. So I want to wish her the best in her future endeavors. And also give a shout out to our fans. This is a picture of me. Obviously, we're very excited. Bellport fans go out everywhere. And and they come in mass, and they represent all areas of our community together, supporting our Clippers. And it was just fun to see not just the enthusiasm in the show, but just their sportsmanship, and they're as supportive of our teams when they meet defeat as they are in victory. But the accolades don't just go to the girls. The boys also had a great run this season. They made it to second quarterfinals in the playoffs. And there's a picture of myself. One of the things I really enjoyed about the basketball season is I got to gloat a little bit to my friends, the superintendent of East High Slip, Paul Manso, when he attended the home game here in Bellport and we defeated his team. So I had a little bragging rights during that time. I also want to give a big shout out to our wrestling program, and especially to our 8th grader Cameron Howard. Cameron Howard's been competing since 7th grade in varsity wrestling. He took 3rd place this year at the state wrestling championship for the 138-pound weight class. So a lot to be proud of. I'm looking to a lot more competition from him, considering he's only in 8th grade. So great representation of our Clippers upstate. In addition to track and field, congratulations also go to junior Ella Mason. Ella came in 2nd place at yesterday's, or rather, not yesterday's, but the state qualifiers in 1,000 and a 600 meter race. She's going to be a contender at the state meets as well. So I just wanted to give her an acknowledgement. As soon as our winter season is officially over, I'll give more a robust update of all the accolades our athletes received. This afternoon, I also got to attend a special event at Brookhaven Elementary School. We had guest authors come by to do a read aloud of their book, which is entitled Hugo and the Impossible Thing, which was written by Renee Felice Smith and Chris Gabriel from the West Coast. And if you recognize the last name, the author Renee Felice Smith is actually the niece of our board president, Ms. Cheryl Felice. They came from the West Coast to read the book, much to the delight of the children. And seated among the children was Dr. Raymond. I just wanted to point that out. She fits right in and gets into the mix with the students. They had a fantastic time. And the theme of the book was about overcoming obstacles and in reality when someone deems something impossible. And sometimes it really isn't. It may be difficult, but not impossible. And I told the kids, for my life, that represents being a superintendent. Anyway, moving on. Civics engagement doesn't always have to be so serious. And so Dr. Blasek, who's here tonight, shared a little civics project that some 2 6th graders undertook on their own, but they got engaged and want more nachos at lunch. So 6th graders, Gia, Trish, and Autumn, Teletsky, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Say it. Thank you.
Easy for you.
They wanted nachos back. So what did they do? They engaged students at the middle school and started a petition which garnered 150 signatures and took their pleas to Dr. Colson, who followed up with Winston's, our food provider, and guess what? Nachos are coming back. So big shout out to those 5th graders for getting civically engaged, for doing their thing. I love it. And nachos are good. Also, big shout out to our technology department, our IT department members who are here, Ms. Costa Albrecht. But over the winter break, the February break, 66 smart boards were installed at Kramer and at Frank P. Long. 66 total boards in total, 25 at Kramer and 41 at Frank P. Long, equipping the classrooms with the latest technology. And this is a picture of kids already using them. We also had our restorative athletes visit Brookhaven Elementary School, which is a great program. It's so well received by elementary school students. You see there some of our varsity girls players interacted with the students in classrooms. Really positive experience. And again, I love bridging the gap between our oldest learners and our youngest learners, because our high school students are the role models for our youngest learners. We also got to attend a great event at Bellport Middle School entitled Savoring Scrumptious Stories, in which students read creative writing that was authored by other students at the middle school. It was a great event at the middle school, and the kids really thoroughly enjoyed having a menu of stories to choose from and sitting at tables and savoring those scrumptious stories. Along with the lines of high school students visiting elementary schools, Our Literacy Leaders, which is a program we started last year, visited Frank P. Long. This is a program in which our high school students read books aloud to younger learners at the schools. Super well received. This year they read the book Firebird by Misty Copeland, much to the delight of our students. And we also observed PS I Love You Day district-wide. As a reminder, PS I Love You Day was done in commemoration of a young girl who lost her father due to mental illness and suicide. So the idea of the day is to bring more awareness to mental health, to bullying, and those types of things. And these are just some of the pictures from some of the events that occurred throughout our district. And a nice sort of like incarnation of this, which is pretty cool, which I saw today, was I noticed at Brookhaven Elementary School there was a board that says, P.S. I love cereal. And I said, wait a second, are you guys kind of making fun of this day? And actually it was a really touching little activity that the kids at Brookhaven did. They tallied what their favorite cereals were so they could better equip their pantry. There is a food pantry that serves needy families in our community at Brookhaven Elementary School. So the kids said, why don't we have cereals that people actually like? So they actually did this tallies and did a little report in the bulletin board dedicated to the cereals that they'll be stocking in their food pantries, which is really touching. So big shout out to Brookhaven, Dr. Raymond, Mr. Calabaluso for putting this program together. Again, great source of Clipper pride. All these things and much more happening in our district. I encourage people to please follow us on our various media platforms. These are the screenshots of all the events that have happened in the last couple of weeks from the various sort of social media platforms that we have available to our community. And if you want to know how to gain access to those programs, please visit our website. We have the community portal, which you can sign up to Blackboard Connect. You'll receive email correspondence from the district, even if you don't have children in the district. We have a link right on our homepage that has the handles for all of our social media platforms. I encourage you to follow them and keep up to date with what's happening. We also have the Superintendent's Corner. I have a monthly entry that I upload to the website. I also have my contact information for community members who want to reach out to me. I provide a weekly update to the community that's available on our website. So please stay in touch. My social media handles are also there for our school district. So again, I encourage people to stay in touch. As much as we limit social media, it is also a great means by which we can communicate all the great things that are happening in South Country. So that concludes my superintendent's report. Thank you again to the trustees, to our teachers, and to our students for doing such amazing things. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next on the agenda are trustee and advisory committee reports. So why don't we go around the table? Guess technically trustee Felice is the first on my left since she's on the camera next to you. Is she ready or should she?
She's coming in.
Okay.
Sure, just want to say that, that have attended, hang on 1 second, I gotta shut the speaker off on this other device. There we go. Okay, I'm watching you live as well. Just wanted to say that of the various legislative agendas that I have been attending, I will be putting together a pamphlet for the Board of Trustees to review and approve on our legislative priorities that we can share with our state officials and lobbying, as we lobby through the budget season. So something that we have quite done in the past, but something that has been requested. And so I took it upon the time that I have been convalescing to put that together. So I hope it's met with favorability. In the meantime, I do want to congratulate the girls. They have been going to many of their games, the girls varsity team, and they have just been such a joy to watch grow. They are really coming together as a team, communicating, and I really have seen the growth from their first game to watching it online, their playoff game, and I hope to see it on Sunday. My wife is committed to getting me there, and so we plan on doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barry?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo her comments on the girls' varsity game. That was very exciting. I got there at just after the second half started, so I got to see them struggle a little bit, bounce back, and it just shows, the maturity of a team that's playing at a good pace. So, wishing them well this weekend, and I look forward to tomorrow. I'm going to be stopping by the middle school for a visit as well.
Thank you. Trustee Kavanaugh?
I have nothing to report.
Okay.
Another time.
Okay. Mr. Flippin?
Nothing
Mr.
for me.
Pacino? Okay. I'm gonna sound like the sports report here because the team, I did go to a couple of the basketball games in the last few weeks, both boys. I also went to the game where Bryn Johnson scored her 1,000th
Point.
point. I was gonna say it's during her entire career at the high school, but I got to see that. I've never seen anything like that.
Must have been
And the
exciting.
other thing is, Trustee Barry, you missed the very end of the first half, right at the buzzer. There was a 3-point basket by one of our players from the far side of center court. And it went in.
Yep.
How many times do you ever see that? So,
Not too many live.
no.
Only on SportsCenter.
Then, so that was really thrilling. And I agree with you about SpongeBob and the happiness factor that came from it, and it carried over through the weekend in my house. So I just wanted to say that these are things that the community can participate in. They're open to the public. Any of the drama and musical productions that we have, as well as our sports events, are open to the public. And it's a great way to spend some time and get to see some of the good things that our kids are involved in. And the business end of it, I did go to a teaching and learning committee meeting. And I think our assistant superintendent is going to be giving a presentation in, I don't remember what meeting, but it's coming up. End of March. And I know that she will have a lot to present to the entire board, and of course it will be to the public so that you can see the good things that are going on in that area. So I thank you for that. Okay. Good. Okay, this is our section. Do we have any cards for public commentary? No comments by the public? Then we will now go on to the budget presentation. Mr. Superintendent, that's yours.
Thank you.
And it is not in board docs. I had to pull it up from my email. It's still not there. And I signed out and back in. Does anybody else have it in board docs?
No, I have it in my email.
It's in the
Yeah.
email.
It's just gotta download. It's kind of a pain in the neck, but
Bear with me for a second.
Yeah, you can open it right up from your email.
Try to upload it.
We have to stay. We have to stay.
So I have a presentation for you that would be learn how to attach.
So if everybody refreshes, it should be there now. All right. We are. So this, we're up to our third budget presentation of our budget season, in which we're going to be reviewing the administration, transportation, and unallocated budget codes for our proposed budget for the 24-25 school year. Again, I always like to start a reminder that, we're kind of early in the process, in the budgeting process. I'll go over what these codes mean, the 1,000s, 5,000s, and 9,000 codes, which we'll summarize today, which will be followed by the 2,000 code, which is curriculum instruction, followed by staffing analysis. And I do want to emphasize that on April 3rd, we're going to update all of our revenues and expenses, because again, this is an ongoing budget process. So where we land at the end of this process can be somewhat different than where we're at right now. This all culminates in the May 8th budget hearing and the May 21st budget vote and election. So getting right to it, again, the budgeting process starts in November, goes through April. We're currently in February, where we're starting to look at staffing, talking about programs that we want to grow or certainly support. Again, I'll say this, that our intention is not to cut any programs or staff moving forward. It's to keep supporting our student achievement. We have a lot of room for growth, and we want to continue moving in a positive direction in that regard. So the essential questions for this budget presentation, first, what guides to district accounting or budgeting? Well, it's called GAAP, or Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, which is an actual term. What funds or revenues are used to pay for our expenditures in our school district? And it's a general fund. It's our main bank account where we have all of our liquid cash. Of course, there are grants that are served to sort of offshoot expenses on the tail end of our budget, but all of our revenue that's used to sort of pay for expenditures comes from our general funds. What do the budget codes mean? And again, last year I went into a little bit more detail, but basically the first four digits are the revenue source, the letter A is the revenue source, the general fund is A. The second set of four digits is the function, followed by the object, followed by the location. So, for example, the thousands represent administration, which we go here. The 1,000 code represents administration, which is basically everything that's done to administer the school district. And we're going to talk a little bit about what the proposed budget for these administrative expenditures will be throughout this presentation. The 5,000 codes relate to transportation, which encompasses all transportation, including field trips and athletics. And we'll talk about our proposed expenditures for that budget code throughout this presentation. And finally, we have the unallocated, or the 9,000 code, which is used to pay agencies outside of the school district, but their costs associated with employee entitlements and benefits, or debts, and governmental obligations. So we're going to get right to it and start with the code 1,000, which is administration or general support, and what we use to fund the administration of our school district. It does not encompass our teachers or instructional staff. We'll talk about that in our next presentation next week. It does include expenditures associated with our Board of Education, our district clerk, and our annual budget and vote and election, the central administration, including the superintendent's office, staff, supplies, and conferences, the business office, our human resources office, our legal and public information, this is advertising, our legal costs, etc., and related OC services, operations and maintenance. This captures all of our custodial and maintenance staff, our equipment, utilities, conferences associated with that staff, and again, BOCES related services. Central printing and data, again, includes staff, equipment, postage, copies, etc. And finally, our insurance and association costs. And those are school association dues, and again, related BOCES services. And the reason you see BOCES a lot is because a lot of the services that we contract through BOCES is aidable. So a lot of the work we do through Eastern Suffolk BOCES. So the first set of budget lines has to do with the Board of Education, the district clerk, and our elections. That's kind of a line-by-line sort of analysis of where we're at, comparing and contrasting our current budget with the proposed budget for 2024. Some of the lines, specifically 1010 490, 1060 490, have been reclassified to budget codes 1680 for more precise budgeting. So this doesn't really represent a loss. If you look at budget line 1010 490, it goes from $1,000 to zero. We're just doing more precise sort of allocations in our budget, so it doesn't really represent a loss. Same with the line 106490, Board of Elections. The $18,000 is reallocated to another budget line for more accurate budgeting. The district clerk salary is also allocated in two different budget lines, and this was corrected in our prior year's budget, and that's what you see reflected there. Moving on to the superintendent's office, it's pretty status quo. There's some nominal changes in that conference code, an increase in conference expenses, supplies for the superintendent's office, the salaries of the clerical assistant. So that's kind of proposed based on expected increments. Moving on to 1310, which is our business office. One of the things I want to point out that the assistant superintendent's salary represents only 0.85 FTE. I'll go over FTEs in a later conference, but basically 85% of her responsibilities are in the business office, 15% of it, and that's where you look at the 0.85 and 0.15, are allocated toward transportation. The reason we allocate the 15% to the transportation line is because that too is BOCES aidable. So we try to capture where their expenses are coming from in a more precise manner, and also take full advantage of aid. The clerical, there is clerical assigned to both the operations and maintenance and the business office. That's reflected in salaries in 310. And the biggest change you see, or the biggest increment you see between the 2 years, is the fact that we finally fully staffed the business office. We corrected civil service titles to make sure that people are being compensated their appropriate compensation for their responsibilities. And a portion of the treasurer's salary is also reflected in another budget line for, again, better tracking of responsibilities as it pertains to budgeting. Our treasurer also has some accounting responsibilities as well. Moving on to the business office, our auditors, basically our external auditors, are auditors that engage in different types of financial practices and oversight. Our internal auditors, that's a little bit of a misnomer. Our internal auditors are actually an independent company that look at our internal practices. So our external auditors look at our financial statements and they provide a financial report on an annual basis. Our internal auditors look at our practices and do risk assessments for our school district. We have our claims auditor, we have the salary of district treasurer. Again, that salary is split into two departments, our purchasing agent, and again, BOCES purchasing services that we allocate to BOCES because again, it's aidable.
Wait, Tony, I'm sorry, where was the other part of that treasury salary located?
That was in 1310. 160, salary business office staff. It's incorporated.
The page before.
So, oh, there it is. I answered your question in the next little bullet point. But yeah, it's code 1310-160 is where that portion of the salary is incorporated. Moving on to human resources. So there's a little drop in the human resources overall expenses, but again, it's pretty status quo year to year. We were pretty much adequately funded for that department. We don't really foresee any changes other than what's indicated there. In terms of our legal, same could be said, there's sort of some minimal increases. The increases to the BOCES consultants, and those are BOCES services that we use. They projected a 3% increase, which is reflected there. But again, we felt like we were adequately budgeted this year, and we don't really foresee any notable changes in those expenditures for the upcoming school year. Moving on to operations and maintenance. Now this includes some staffing, our custodial staffing, our maintenance workers, overtime, and so the increases you see reflected there, pretty much reflect changes in compensation due to new contract negotiations and new settled contracts, overtime. One of the things we've been doing is really providing a lot more coverage in our extracurricular activities to ensure the safety of our community members. And we've been doing a lot of enhancements to our facilities and our plants. So that's why you see somewhat of an increase in those budget lines projected for the following year. Moving on to slide 13, this is our operations.
Sorry,
Yep.
The overtime for operations, is it possible you could give us the actuals of what we spent on that line last year and the update? Sure. Thank you.
Steve, make a note of that?
Yeah.
Got it. We'll provide that in our update tomorrow. Moving on to operations and maintenance, these are cover a lot of things. A lot of our sort of overhead in terms of energy costs. The increases you see here are due in large part to inflation, cost escalation for services, and of course, rising energy costs, some of which we hope to be mitigated when we finally move forward with our energy performance contract. That's well underway, and we're hoping to break ground with that in the summer of 2025. And some of the budget lines have been modified, reflecting a shift to contracting with BOCES. So namely, the budget line I want to point out or emphasize to the board is budget line 162490. You see a large increase there from $20,000 approximately to $100,000. That's because we were using services from agencies directly and not contracting through BOCES. When you contract through BOCES, you receive aid on those services, up to 60% aid. So we shifted that line to the BOCES line to make sure that we more adequately reflect what we're doing. It also represents a change in practice. We're trying to utilize Eastern Suffolk BOCES a lot more because, again, those services are ultimately aidable to the school district and generate state aid. Moving on to our safety officers, I'm happy to report that we have a full complement of safety officers. There is not really a notable change in the overhead. We had budgeted in the prior year to have an adequate number of safety officers, which was captured. We did modify the overtime because we've been providing more coverage in our extracurricular activities just to ensure the safety of our community members, not just here at home events, but events abroad. Anyone abroad, well, outside of the district. We're not going overseas with our athletes just yet. But if you notice, if you go to events like with the basketball game in Huntington, you saw that we had security staff there as well. And again, it's just to be extra cautious. There isn't a change in the overall budget line for our safety officers, but we sort of shifted some of the funds.
The line for the equipment, would equipment cover things like cameras and radios and things like that? No. What?
Not in this line.
Not in that line, okay.
Equipment, the reason we reduced it is because equipment would be like the walkie-talkies, radios, which we just purchased. We reduced that line and added more to the supplies, to the materials and supplies. And again, these are budgetary lines, that doesn't represent actuals. We reallocated more funds to our materials and supplies, like uniforms, and those types of things.
Well, my concern with reducing that line for equipment is because we know that our cameras were, a lot of them were in disrepair. We needed new ones. I just want to make sure that we have the money there to continually changing those cameras.
That's a great point, but that's actually the, right here, Mr. B whispering behind me. But yeah, that was a capital reserve vote we passed.
Yeah.
So that's considered a capital improvement project, not equipment. Equipment represents the individual items you purchase, but we're actually redoing our cameras, pretty much district-wide. So that's where that cost of those cameras will be covered in the capital reserve project that we're doing.
Okay.
So it was voter approved last October.
So that will take care of the upkeep in the future of those.
So now upkeep is a different budget line. That's maintenance, not equipment. Yeah.
So security camera maintenance is in a different budget line.
Correct.
Okay.
Moving on to central planning and data. Again, pretty self-explanatory. There's the biggest changes there, again, is the addition of contractual and other represents an adjustment to the budget code to more precisely reflect the expenditures. So the supply budget on another line was reduced by the same amount. So when you see contractual and other go from $0 to $80,000, that doesn't represent new expenses. It's just the sort of having more precise documentation of where these expenses are being paid from. And again, a lot of these contractual services are things that we're contracting out with BOCES. That would be one of the larger increments there. The increase in BOCES data processing, again, represents a reclassifying, which I just said, of items to the correct budget codes. We've been doing a lot of shifting just to create more precision in our budgeting to help us better track where these funds are coming from. And the other expenses are just basically some enhancements we're making to our data processing, data security, that we're trying to make sure that we're at least, at the very least, up to date with our data protection and our infrastructure, our digital infrastructure, I should say. Another big chunk of this increase is the purchasing through BOCES of Chromebooks. We're looking to purchase 600 Chromebooks, I believe, for grades 3, 6, and 9, because they need to be updated. One of the things that's not so great about technology is that it ages, and you need to replace them periodically. So right now, we're scheduling purchasing Chromebooks for our students in 3rd, 6th, and 9th grade. And that's where you see a pretty substantial increase in those budget lines. But I want to emphasize again that we're going to be making those purchases through Eastern Suffolk BOCES, which again results in building aid in the long run.
What line was that, Tony, with the Chromebooks?
That's reflected in line 1680,490. If you notice, it was 1.4, almost $1.45 million, went up to $2.5 million, almost $1 million.
So what will we do with the old Chromebooks?
You either repurpose them, donate them, but a lot of them become obsolete.
Is there an option to rent Chromebooks instead of purchasing them?
I don't know the answer to that question. I have no idea.
Can we
So
look into
typically,
You mean for us to rent them first instead of buying them?
Yes.
well, no, we use them, so as long as they're functional, we keep them. We use them as loaners in schools, or we could create class sets with older Chromes, with multiple uses. One of the things we also engage this year in is any old equipment that's functional but not used, we've been auctioning off through an auction website, generating additional funds for our website. This is something
I
initiated
just don't want
by,
them to be thrown away, and I don't want to stockpile a bunch of useless computers. So those two things.
That's
I
a
just
great
wanna
point.
make
So
sure.
anything that we have to get rid of in bulk has to be board approved.
To be thrown away, but
Correct.
it's still thrown away. So I don't want
Right.
to throw away a bunch of computers.
No, correct.
If we don't
And
have
that
to.
makes
If you
sense.
throw them away, they're obsolete. That's what happens, right?
So, yeah, the only time they
Yeah,
get
well,
disposed
we
of
could
is if they're
we could
obsolete.
recycle them, or we could look into stop buying new ones and renting them, so we don't have to throw them away. So that's all.
I still think it's more cost effective to purchase through BOCES.
Okay.
We'll look into it.
I appreciate that.
Moving into our insurance codes, that pretty much stayed pretty status quo. We gave a 3% sort of increment to each of these budget lines, just in terms of anticipated cost escalation coming up to the new school year. That concludes the 1,000 codes. Then we move to transportation. And transportation includes budget lines for all student transportation costs, including salaries, contract services, and transportation to district schools, BOCES programs, special education programs, private and parochial schools, athletics, and field trips. This is just one big sort of spreadsheet with all those costs represented. There's a minimal cost that reflects just sort of anticipated cost escalation. I do want to emphasize that the administrator for transportation is our business official. As I mentioned before, 50% of her salary we allocate from this budget line, because again, it's aidable by the state. And she is also in charge of our transportation. Increases in transportation contracts represent expected cost escalation for the upcoming year. And we also allocated additional funds to the Bellport Middle School to help subsidize grade level trips. For example, this year, we're looking to bring our sixth grade to medieval times, which will totally fund for our sixth graders. So again, all these sort of budget lines, and we are discretionary at each of the schools, also supplemented by our South Country Education Foundation. They provide funding for a lot of these trips as well. So again, we want to create an eclectic experience for our students, and I think field trips are important. This also includes our athletics, transportation, etc. Moving on to the 9,000 code, that's unallocated or undistributed expenditures. What that essentially means that these are specific codes are not assigned to the function for which they're expended. And the 9,000 code includes governmental obligations like retirement systems, Social Security, Medicare tax, FICA, workers' compensation and unemployment insurance, employee benefits, which include life insurance, disability, dental, health insurance, Medicare reimbursements, insurance opt-out payments, sick leave buyouts, tuition reimbursements, and terminal leave payouts and sick leave buybacks. And then finally, we have debt service and special aid, which is our serial bonds and principal and interest, our tax revenue, anticipated notes, or our TANs, bless you, and our transfer to food service fund and special aid fund. I'll talk a little bit about the food service fund and what that means. First, we have our governmental obligation. Bless you again. Pretty status quo. We anticipate a slight increase in these codes, but we've been adequately sort of budgeting for these codes. We don't really anticipate a monumental increase in these codes. We also have our employee benefits. These codes, everything from life insurance. The increases you see reflected there is anticipated cost escalation from one year to the next. We don't really anticipate a huge increase in our budget lines here. And finally, we have our debt service and special aid, which are civil bonds, principal and interest. The decrease you see in the serial bonds interest is based on a schedule that's provided to us. And that's where we get that information from. The interest for the TAN, or the tax anticipation note, we anticipate going up, because right now the interest rates are pretty high. We sort of anticipate interest rates lowering in the next couple of years, but you have to plan for them staying status quo, or even increasing a little bit. So again, the budget is a tool, it doesn't represent actuals, but we just want to be prepared. And the other lines will remain status quo because we've been adequately funding those and don't foresee any increases in those lines. So again, what I want to emphasize is, one more point. The transfer to food service, right now we get funding and kids all receive free breakfast and lunch. That's based on the federal government. Should that change, we want to make sure we budget for it so that we can subsidize it and continue maintaining our free lunch program for all of our students. Doesn't mean we'll have to use it, but we can't use it if we don't budget for it. So we want to make sure that line is there in the unlikely event anything changes in the foreseeable future. So to sum it all up, we're looking at an overall, for these specific budget codes, increase of 3.3% overall when you put them all together. I want to emphasize that these three budget lines only represent 50% of the budget. So the 3.3% anticipated increase does not represent an increase to our overall budget. It also doesn't represent the requested tax levy. This is just a gauge for us to know, wow, the 1,000 code lines represent a 10% increase. Should we be looking at it a little bit more closely, a little bit more precisely to see if we can reduce it? It's just a gauge, and I want to share with the Board of Trustees to see where we're at in terms of the escalating costs for the upcoming school year. The 9,000 is pretty nominal, as is the 5,000 codes, as we stand today. I want to, again, emphasize this, I said this verbally, but again, the percent change only applies to these budget expenditures and not to the overall budget and not to the tax levy. And again, emphasize that April 3rd, we're going to be revisiting all this anyway, and these numbers are likely to change. When we look at our staffing, when we look at our projections, when we look at our enrollment, we may have to shift some of these budget lines accordingly to make sure we propose a budget that meets the needs of the district, helps our students grow and achieve, and has enough funds for us to operate the school district, which is a question Trustee Hayes always likes to ask. Will we have enough to operate the school district? And again, that's the whole point of the budget process, to create a budget that certainly not only provides enough resources to operate the school district, but to have hopefully some sort of fund balance at the end to sort of keep funding our reserves, because as we look at future challenges, we want to make sure we stay financially healthy. Again, just a review, next week on March 6th, we're going to be doing curriculum and instruction. That's the 2,000 codes, which represents almost another half of our budget. We'll be sharing those details at next week's meeting, scheduled for the 6th. And that concludes my presentation. I don't know if the trustees have any additional questions. I'll be happy to go back. Yes?
I just have a quick one. Are we getting a copy of the full budget with the actuals?
We can provide that, yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, we've always gotten it in the past, I don't remember if we got it last year, but we used to get a binder. It has, and it actually was like a 3-year look back of budget, what was budgeted and what was actual.
Yeah, I'll talk to Mr. Gee. I don't know if we provided it at the end of the year last year, but we'll,
I thought we had it, I mean, we should, I mean, honestly, that should be something that should be at our desks at every budget hearing, so we can reference each individual item code, and we can look at actuals, because Cameron brought up, Mr. Trent brought up a point on a question on actuals, and it's kind of hard to budget and see really, and get a look without seeing what actuals are.
yeah, so we'll provide that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I was going to go around. Do you have a question, Mr. Flippin?
Not right now.
I'm good, thank you.
Hold on. Trustee Felice,
Cheryl, you good?
question?
No, thank you.
Okay.
More of a comment, not a question. I just wanted to say I really like how you guys are looking at contracts to see which ones are aidable and which ones, we can switch to BOCES. I think that's a great idea, and I haven't heard us do that yet, so thank you for that.
Listen, the idea, and even with the capital improvements, one of the things that we kept in our budget is the transfer capital line for $1 million, because not only does that allow us to do immediate sort of capital improvement projects, but again, the idea is you wanted to start generating that state aid on a continual basis, so you don't have a discrepancy in the future. The more capital improvement projects we do, the more aid we start getting in the foreseeable future, which is aidable. And again, our reimbursement rate over 15 years is at 76%. So for every dollar we spend on capital improvement project, we receive 76 cents back. So, thank you, appreciate that.
I want to echo that, because I just did some rough arithmetic when you gave two of the big ones. One was the BOCES, this is 1620,490, slide number 13, where it went from 21,000 to 100,000. But you pointed out that that's 60% aidable. So that, if I do the arithmetic right, that's $60,000 that's gonna come back to us over
Years, yeah.
over a period of time. And then the same thing is true on the Chromebooks, and I think I heard you say that that's something like $1 million in there for
So
Chromebooks.
the overall line went up by $1 million. I believe the Chromebook expense is something like $600,000.
Okay, so that would be about $360,000 coming back over a period of time. And that's on top of the $1 million transfer to capital line, where as we spend that money and get necessary work done, you get that back, but that one's at a 76%
Right,
rate?
so basically, when the projects are closed is when you start receiving the aid. So if you recall, we had 2 capital reserve votes in the last year that amount to a little over $5 million. So that will start generating the state aid in the future. Each year, we engage in $1 million worth of capital improvement projects. That adds to the pot. And that's the idea, and our district needs it. When you look at our buildings, it's been a long time since we've done like substantial work in our buildings. So our idea, because interest rates are so high, the idea of proposing a bond at this time, I don't think is wise. But let's chip away at it and do what we can, so long as it fits within our budget and within our means, to keep chipping away at it and enhancing our district. Because I do believe in Clipper Pride. One of the projects at the forefront of my brain is our high school auditorium. And I know that doesn't speak to student achievement or curriculum, we'll talk about that later. It's just as important, but that is a flagship space of our school district. And we put on wonderful performances, and it really is dilapidated, and it's not a source of pride for me. So we're looking to remediate that as soon as possible. And that too will generate aid.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Same as the calendar?
Yes. So, the next, thank you, trustee Hayes. Our next item for discussion is the proposed calendar for the upcoming school year. Basically, New York State, or Eastern Suffolk BOCES, we like to follow the model from Eastern Suffolk BOCES. They put out their calendar first, and we try to replicate it because a lot of our students use or attend Eastern Suffolk BOCES. So we modeled the proposed calendar off their calendar, and they've added a couple of holidays that have been sort of added by New York State, which includes Eid al-Fitr, which is a holiday that would be celebrated on March 31st. We have the Lunar New Year, Juneteenth, of course. But the way the calendar works, we have to have 183 instructional days from the beginning of the school year to the end. Some school districts have proposed a start date for students before Labor Day. That's something I certainly would not recommend here because a lot of our students engage in seasonal work, and the summer season pretty much stops Labor Day weekend. So we want to make sure, while we sometimes have our staff come in for professional development prior to Labor Day, certainly we have our kids coming in after Labor Day. So what we have proposed is the first day of school for students to be the Tuesday after Labor Day, our professional development to happen on August 28th and 29th. That's a Wednesday and Thursday before Labor Day. But the most remarkable piece of this calendar is the fact that it seems like we'll have 2 weeks off for the holiday break in December. About 70% of the districts I surveyed in Suffolk County have the 2 weeks off. There are a handful of districts will be returning on the January 2nd and the 3rd, which is a Thursday and Friday. Our concern is in terms of staffing and childcare. If so many districts on Suffolk County and in Nassau County are closed, we're gonna have issues just with attendance overall. So we are able to fit in the 183 days with the proposed calendar. Our last day of school will be on June 27th. And so I open it up for comments or questions.
I'm looking around the table and I'm not seeing anybody raise a hand. Any
Cheryl, do you have
comments?
any?
And trustee Felice? No comment. Okay, so you've got the right number in there.
Yep.
And I know in the past, administrators have been asking, the teachers or the union representatives about the schedule. Were there any changes or anything that was needed?
Not to my knowledge, I had some discussions with Mr. Brady, but this is pretty much a consistent sort of calendar for a lot of school districts in Suffolk County.
And I think the 2 weeks over the December break, it's fortuitous this year. Might not happen again, but
Right. It's rare.
I would think that people would be glad to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I'm sure kids and teaching staff will be somewhat happy to have a little reprieve. I see a thumbs up from Mr. Brady over there.
Okay, well, then we've got his comment.
There we go.
That's all we need. Okay. So now we can go to board consent agenda for curriculum.
Correct, Trustee Hayes. So the administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in schedules G1 through G3.
Is there a motion to, trustee Flippins, second by trustee Kavanaugh?
Did we have to take a vote on F,
On the consolidated calendar.
the calendar?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We should finish this.
Thank you
one.
very much. As I said, I was rusty, but let's finish
Well, we're all
G,
here.
because we're doing G, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And we've got the motion and the second for G 1 through 3.
I'm sorry, who's the first and the second on that?
I'm
For
sorry?
G, who's the?
It was Raphael and myself.
Thank you.
Raphael had the first.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
All in favor?
It's, and trustee
Sure.
Felice?
I wasn't looking. Yeah,
Yes.
her hand's up.
It's unanimously approved. So now we're gonna go back and do the, do you want to make a recommendation now for F2
Sure.
so that we can do that?
The administration recommends the approval of discussion item F2, the consolidated school calendar for the 2024-2025 school year.
Okay, is there a motion to approve F2? Trustee Trent, second by trustee Barry. All in favor? And unanimously approved. Okay.
Before I go on to the next consent items, I just want to highlight that we approved a whitewater rafting trip again for our student council. I did go skiing with them this year, and if I'm available, I will go whitewater rafting with our high school students. So I'll be sure I'm safe and don't get injured. But we love providing these experiences for our students. It's a great way for them to connect with each other, and it really creates lifelong memories. So thank you for your support on that. Moving on to personnel agenda items. The administration recommends approval for personnel changes reflected in schedules H1 through H7.
Okay, is there a motion?
Maybe.
Trustee Trent, second by trustee Barry. All in favor? Okay, and
Yes.
it's unanimous.
All right.
And,
No,
Before I move on, I want to
yeah, I thought you would say something.
So at this point, I'm really excited for two reasons. I'm excited that Mr. Briggs will be moving on in his life. And when I say excited, there's a little bit of jealousy. As much as I love working here and I don't see retirement in my horizon just yet, I do want to thank again, and then we'll give you a more formal show of appreciation as the year progresses, but for your continued service, the years of service here, not just as a student, as a building administrator, as our assistant superintendent for human resource for the past, 16 years?
Been here working at the end of the year, 17 and a half years.
17 and a half years, and your shoes will be very hard to fill. But I do want to take this opportunity to introduce Jason Huntsman. Jason Huntsman was just appointed now to be our next Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. Mr. Huntsman has years of experience serving in various roles who's a high school principal, middle school principal, assistant principal. I believe you're a math teacher.
Math is in my heart. I was elementary and special ed, but math was what I taught, yeah.
Math and special ed, teacher as well. One of the things I think I found most impressive by Mr. Huntsman is just his demeanor.
Podium.
She'd like him to come to the podium?
Oh, you can come up to the podium to be recognized. Yeah. So, but yeah, I just wanted to say, one of the things that struck us most about is just he's a systems person, tech savvy, very reasonable. You know, one of the things we're gonna start looking forward to is, again, supporting our staff, supporting our teachers, our various collective bargaining units, and becoming an essential member of our cabinet, just like Mr. Briggs has been doing for the last year. So I want to formally welcome you to South Country. I'm anxious to get you started. Mr. Huntsman will be transitioning alongside Mr. Briggs from October through June, so he can hit the ground running come July. So
I
welcome.
think you mean like
April.
April.
April, what did I say?
October.
Not October, don't get nervous.
Already working?
You're behind.
You're behind. So I want to welcome you to the district. So really pleased to have you, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have business agenda items. So the administration recommends approval of business items reflected in schedules I-1 through I-4.
I think I-1 doesn't
Yeah,
go here.
Oh.
Doesn't that come off?
it's supposed to come off, right?
Yes, you are correct. I stand corrected.
Okay.
So why don't we just approve 2 through 4?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. The administration recommends approval of business items reflected in schedules I-2 through I-4.
Is there a motion for I-2 through I-4? Trustee Trent and Trustee Kavanaugh, second. All in favor? And it's unanimous. Any commentary, public commentary? No cards? So, closing remarks by board members. I'm Trustee Flippin, Mr. Pacini, Mr. Barry, Kavanaugh, Mr. Trent.
I'm just ecstatic that we
Okay,
almost.
Trustee Felice. What?
I just wanted to say, no, I just wanted to say that I'm glad we're gonna be finished before 9 tonight.
That's
a very good
You know,
move.
that-
Yes,
That's gonna be
I
a
second
good
that.
introduction to your final motion tonight. I
That's
just
right.
wanted to check.
And
I think
Yeah.
Yes.
Trustee Felice has a comment.
the floor is yours.
Just a quick comment. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Huntsman and welcome him aboard. And also congratulations to Mr. Briggs. Retirement is a very happy place. I trust that he will enjoy it, and I look forward to his celebratory party.
Thank you.
And I don't need to repeat what Trustee Felice said, but we are glad that we were able to approve your appointment tonight, Mr. Huntsman. And again, Mr. Briggs, if you want any pointers about retirement, you know how to reach me.
I will take it. Thank you.
So with no more closing remarks, we have a motion by Mr. Trent to adjourn, second by Trustee Kavanaugh. All in favor? I think this one, wait,
Are you in favor?
She's clapping.
all in favor, okay.